have such sights to show you. So Hellraiser tells the story of an undead man trying to revitalize his body to escape demonic beings and their torturous underworld. What is up, everybody, and welcome to the long-awaited and long-dreaded Hellraiser review series. I think there's like, what, 10, 11, 12, 75 of these fucking things. So yes, we're gonna go through all of the Hellraiser movies, and I've actually only seen 5 of these ones before. I've seen the first 4, and I've seen the most recent one, Judgment. Every other film in this franchise is gonna be a first-time watch, so it's gonna be an interesting ride. Buckle up, follow along with me, shall we? Da-dun-da-da. So Hellraiser is a very interesting franchise in horror fandom because it kind of, Pinhead fits along with those horror icons, those slasher icons like Jason and Michael and Freddy and Chucky and Ghostface and all of that, but he's kind of a guest star in his own franchise. Pinhead really isn't the star of a Hellraiser movie, and oftentimes, even this first original film, which I think most people would argue is the best one, he's definitely a side character. He's something that propels the plot forward. He's not the main plot device. You would look at the poster or the cover of Hellraiser, and you would think, oh, it's gonna be a movie about this guy chasing down someone or trying to kill someone or trying to torture someone, and it's not that at all. And though most people would say Hellraiser is one of the lesser horror franchises as a whole, the first film is very beloved by horror fans. So, do I agree that Hellraiser is a cult classic, is a horror classic? Does this deserve to kick off a franchise and the franchise just was mishandled? Or should this have been a one and done? We're gonna get into all of that right now. Starting off with the positives for Hellraiser. And my main positive for this film is actually the story, because you can never really put your finger on what Hellraiser exactly is about. Like I said, you look at the poster, you think this is about some kind of a demonic looking slasher or some kind of a possession or something along those lines, and it's really not that at all. It's about 2 lovers that the woman realizes that her long gone lover, her brother-in-law, is able to be revitalized if she brings him victims and kills them inside of this room in his house. And so she starts drawing and seducing these men, and slowly this guy, this evil fucker Frank, just starts to revitalize and starts to get his bones back and his muscles and his brain, and all the while in the background is this looming threat of the Cenobites. And whenever you open up this little lament configuration, this Hellraiser box, it opens up a door to their dimension, they come in, and they don't have any distinction between torture and paradise, between pain and pleasure, and so they are hunting Frank this entire movie in the background. And so there's so many different layers to that story. There's so many different creative things, so many different directions you could go in if you wanted to expand on this story, that I think for a little isolated horror film that pretty much just takes place in this one house, it's got a lot of depth to it.
You opened it, we came.
Also really love the effects in this. I think that all of the physical effects of Frank as he is regenerated throughout the runtime of the movie is great. I mean, the first one is okay. You can tell there's a lot of different rubbery look to him whenever he is his first form when he first comes out, and don't look at me, just bring me blood. But as he starts to get his full form back, as you start to see muscles and veins and tendons and all of that, it's actually pretty impressive. You move into the Cenobites, those are just iconic designs. I mean, from Pinhead to all of the other designs. I mean, all of these movies bring in some new Cenobite, and that's usually kind of the draw. What's the new design going to be? I mean, they're beautiful and horrific in equal amounts, and even some of the other effects regarding like just the body horror, where somebody's got chains inside of them and they're pulling their face apart, like in the final act whenever Frank has got like 19 chains pulling him. I mean, that stuff just looks great. It ages well, and practical over digital, baby, it will always be king. And there's something about this movie that I really appreciate for just how uncomfortable it makes you. Not with the visuals, not with the theme of torture, it's just every single layer of this movie, there's something icky behind it. I mean, the main 2 characters, we have Julia and Frank, and just their whole seductive, nasty relationship where she's fucking her brother-in-law, and the innocent father, the innocent husband of hers has no idea, and just Frank is this guy that's just so mentally fucked up to where he's experienced all that life can give him, and so he goes as far as to open this box to experience the full depths of torture because he's experienced all sensories that you can have in a human world. I mean, there's just something that's so demented about that. Then you have the whole angel-devil combination between the Cenobites and this whole theme about, you know, torture and pain being indistinguishable, and, you know, we have such sights to show you, and everything about this movie just, it makes you want to take a shower. Just reading the plot synopsis makes you want to take a shower. Finally back. Sorry guys, Pinhead found out I wasn't giving this movie a 5 out of 5, got a little pissed off, and I have been stuck in their realm for the past couple of months. So here I am back again. Now, where was I? Okay, positives with Hellraiser. Visuals in this movie are awesome. Visually strong film. I don't just mean like effects, I don't just mean like the set design, I just mean like the way that they frame the shots, the way that they cake everything, not only in gore and in that whole theme of pain and pleasure, but there's like singular shots you could take from this movie and just show somebody a picture of it, and they'll immediately get the thematic elements of what Hellraiser is going for. The tone that they are going for with the story and with the characters of this film is completely carried through with what they show on camera. Overall, the acting is all pretty good in this movie. There's nobody that's poor, there's nobody that stands out as being a weak link. I think that Doug Bradley certainly stands out as the strongest link, mostly because his character just kind of glues your eyes to him, so no matter what he says, you're somewhat captivated by it, and that's definitely working to his favor here. But just the vibrato of his voice, the cadence in which he says some of his lines, he is the guy that's really standing out amongst all of the other actors.
We'll tear your soul apart.
Beyond him, I'd say Julia, as far as the non-Cenobite characters, really stands out because she has a wide range of emotions to where she's got to be, you know, in love and lustful, and then she's got to be worried in spots, she's got to be seductive in spots, but there's also elements where you almost feel like she's regretful or almost feels bad or disturbed with what she's doing at certain points. So she has a lot of different emotional range as well. And while the other characters, I won't say they get a ton to do, you know, obviously aside from Kirsty as our main girl, she's pretty good as well, but I have some other thoughts that I'll get into with her in a second. But, you know, the other two guys that are left over, the brothers, the ones that are torn between Julia, where you got Frank and then you got Larry. Frank's a very stoic character, you know, he's very one note. He's just kind of like this dick that just, he comes across as very arrogant, even in the undead form, to where he sounds like he knows everything and he wants everything and he has everything all at once. And then Larry is just a guy that you can't completely get into him, even though that performance comes across perfectly as the character would need it to be. He just seems so naive to the point where you can't really grasp onto him. But none of that's because of the performances. All across, pretty damn good. Now, as far as the mixed element with Hellraiser, the main one for me is actually the main girl, which is Kirsty. Now, I don't think that she's bad here. I think that she is a good character, and she certainly gets developed a little bit more as the movies go on, which kind of retroactively make her place in this movie a little bit better. But just as an isolated story, she's not the most interesting final girl, and she doesn't have the most interesting final girl arc by the end of this film. I mean, she spends about 3/4 of this movie just worrying about her dad, just waking up with night sweats, waking up after dreams, calling him to check up on him, showing up at the house to check up on him, and she never really does anything about it, which just frustrates you as a viewer, because you're like, well, if you're that worried about your dad, say something. Like, hey, that bitch is crazy, you're coming with me, and I'm not leaving this house until you agree to it. Like, do something. And even when you get to the third act, which is where she kind of comes into her own, and all of a sudden now she's the person that we're kind of latched onto to be victorious here, even her victory over Frank and Julia and the Cenobites kind of feels more like a circumstance of coincidences. Seems like more like she lucked into that victory than anything else, because she opens the box, the Cenobites are like, hey, bring us Frank or we're gonna fuck you up. She goes, okay, and then she just goes to the house and opens the box again and then moves out of the way while Frank gets taken out. And there's just not really this huge triumph, you know what I mean? To liken it to something, which I know I'm biased, something like Nancy in the original Nightmare on Elm Street, where she has to literally take on the main villains, you just don't feel that level of urgency with her character. Still a good character, still likable, and I do really like Ashley Lawrence as an actor, but could have been a little bit better of a final girl arc in this movie as far as I'm concerned. Now moving on to the negatives. Now, one of the reasons why, although I do like this original film for what it's going for, I don't find it to be the most rewatchable movie in the world is because it's so dark It's so bleak. It's so unrelenting with all of the themes that it's going for, with just, you know, pain and torture and all of that. There's just really nothing to root for. There's no character to root for here. Like I said, Kirsty kind of becomes your character to root for, but it just kind of is just left by default by the end. But everybody you look, you're just like, no, you're an asshole, you're an asshole, you're a demon, you're naive, and there's just nothing here. If you want any kind of redemption, any kind of positivity, any kind of light at the end of the tunnel, not the horror movie for you. And my final negative, despite really liking a lot of the practical effects with the gore and some of the animatronics with the regeneration scenes, there is a couple of very weak effects in this movie that take away from that overall quality. One of which I believe they called the Engineer. It was this really tall monster with some extended arms that was chasing Kirsty down a hallway, and they kind of almost framed it as like the final boss, like that was somebody that was even greater of a foe than the Cenobites, which that alone was weird. The Cenobites are clearly the better villain, the more interesting, the more scary villains. That doesn't intimidate anybody, but just the effect of it was more silly than anything else. It does not age well. Then you have the very last shot of the movie where it's just like this homeless guy who's been periodically tailing Kirsty throughout the movie, and then he just morphs into the fucking bat from the Golden Child and flies away. That doesn't age very well either, and that to be your final note that you're left on in this movie, it's like, oh damn, just end it 30 seconds sooner.
Jesus wept.
But overall, guys, Hellraiser is a good original horror film. I think that it would actually stand even more of a legacy if this had just been a one and done. Unfortunately, it's tied to what's known as one of the worst horror franchises out there, so that does retroactively kind of make this movie a little weaker, unfortunately. But even on its own merits, it's never been one of my favorite horror movies. It probably never will be, but for what it's going for the themes that they're going for the visuals that they're going for, it's a very good, iconic horror film. So if you are into that type of thing, this is one of the better ones. If you're not into that whatsoever, there's nothing in Hellraiser for you. So know who you are, know what type of horror fan you are, know what type of movie you want to check out, and if what Hellraiser has to offer is up your alley, this is one of the stronger and more disturbing films of that type. It's a great original movie that unfortunately just had a lot of bad sequels, but this original movie does deserve to be on your shelves. So go out and buy it. So what do you guys think of the original Hellraiser? Do you think that the original movie is the best in this franchise? Is there actually one of the sequels that you prefer more? Do you want a remake? Apparently we're getting like two. We're getting like a TV series remake and a movie remake. So do you like this original story? Do you like the tone? Do you like the Cenobites? Or is this just not your thing whatsoever? Let me know down below, guys. Please like and share this video and hit that subscribe button, because we are going to be straight through the Hellraiser franchise until the end for the next week and a half. So if you're a Hellraiser fan, or if you just like to watch me squirm with pain and pleasure all through this franchise, hit the subscribe button and you won't miss any of that. Thank you guys for watching as always, and remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.